The Sri Lanka Freedom Party states that the party will only support the 19th Amendment to the Constitution if electoral reforms are also tabled in Parliament. The decision was reached at a meeting presided by Chairman of the SLFP, President Maithripala Sirisena. Speaking in Parliament yesterday, Speaker Chamal Rajapaksa announced that the Supreme Court has determined that the 19th Amendment is consistent with the Constitution, but certain sections require a referendum. Newsfirst delves deep into the clauses that require a referendum.
The 19th Constitutional Amendment Draft Bill was presented to Parliament by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe on the 24th of March. Later, 19 petitions were filed with regard to the new amendment. 5 of them were filed for the amendment, while 14 petitions were filed against it. Among the petitioners were Gominda Asri, Ivan Pereira, Udega Manpila, Darshan Weerasekara, Venerable Bengamue Nalakathera, Swarnapali Vanikasekara, Venerable Mathara Anandasagara Thera, Somavira Chandrasiri, Nishanta Sri Varnasinghe, MTV Channel Private Limited, MBC Networks Private Limited, and Sisira Jaikodi. On Wednesday, the 1st of April, a panel of Supreme Court judges led by Chief Justice K. Sri Pavan started to consider the petitions. The other Supreme Court judges who sat on the panel were Justices Chandra Ekanaika and Priyasad Deb. On the 6th of April, the Supreme Court concluded considering petitions filed in connection with the 19th Constitutional Amendment. Speaking in Parliament yesterday, Speaker Chamal Rajapaksa announced that certain sections of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution require a referendum. The sections are 42.3, which states that the Prime Minister shall be the head of the Cabinet of Ministers. 43.1. The Prime Minister shall determine the number of ministers of the Cabinet of Ministers and the ministries and the assignment of subjects and functions to such ministers. 43.3. The Prime Minister may at any time change the assignment of subjects and functions and recommend to the President changes in the composition of the Cabinet of Ministers. Such changes shall not affect the continuity of the Cabinet of Ministers and the continuity of its responsibility to Parliament. 44.2. The Prime Minister shall determine the subjects and functions which are to be assigned to ministers appointed under paragraph 1 of this article and the ministries, if any, which are to be in charge of such ministers. 44.3. The Prime Minister may at any time change any assignment made under paragraph 2. 44.5. At the request of the Prime Minister, any minister of the Cabinet of Ministers may by notification published in the Gazette delegate to any minister who is not a member of the Cabinet of Ministers any power or duty pertaining to any subject or function assigned to such Cabinet Minister, or any power or duty conferred or imposed on him or by her by any written law, and it shall be lawful for such other minister to exercise and perform any power or duty delegated, notwithstanding anything to the contrary, in the written law by which that power or duty is conferred or imposed on such minister of the Cabinet of Ministers. And Clause 26, 104, B5C also requires a referendum. Where the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, or the Independent Television Network, or any other broadcasting or telecasting enterprise owned or controlled by the state or the enterprise of every private broadcasting or telecasting operator, as the case may be, contravenes any guidelines issued by the Commission under subparagraph A, the Commission may appoint a competent authority by name or by office, who shall, with effect from the date of such appointment, take over the management of such broadcasting corporation, Rupavahini Corporation, or independent television network, or other broadcasting or telecasting enterprise owned or controlled by the state or the enterprise of such private broadcasting or telecasting operator, as the case may be. Insofar as such management relates to all political broadcast or any other broadcast which, in the opinion of the Commission, impinge on the election until the conclusion of the election, and the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, and the Independent Television Network or other broadcasting or telecasting enterprise owned or controlled by the state or the enterprise of such private broadcasting or telecasting operator shall not, during such period, discharge any function connected with or relating to such management which is taken over by the competent authority.
What we know is the Gazette, the gazetted version of the 19th Amendment, which the citizenry perused and then filed a number of petitions with regard to. Now, there is something outside of that Gazette which the Prime Minister and his team have put in to a new 12-page document which contains amendments to the amendment. Now, those 12 pages are not in the public domain. Those 12 pages have not been the subject of petitions before the Supreme Court, simply because nobody knows what's in them. In order to petition the Supreme Court, we do know from what the politicians have said that those 12 pages contain a very important clause which says that the Prime Minister's advice shall always be acted upon by the President. The President is always governed by the advice of the PM, that the President shall always act on the advice of the PM.
On the 13th of March, the Prime Minister brought forward a completely different amendment to the Constitution to the Cabinet. And according to that amendment brought forward on the 13th, the President was made a ceremonial President. The President was also made the State Leader, Leader of the Executive and Commanding Chief, while the Prime Minister was made the Head of the Cabinet, the person who appoints the Cabinet as well as the person who has powers over the Cabinet. Although the President was made the leader of the government, in other sections of the amendment, the fact that the Prime Minister is the head of the Cabinet was not removed, which is why there is a conflict of views over this gazette. What was done was, under the pretext of eradicating that clause, they brought forward a re-amendment and was taken to the Supreme Court unconstitutionally without gazetting it. Now we clearly said that the only thing that can be done according to the determination of the Supreme Court is to democratize this executive presidency. Now the President will still be the head of state, head of the government, leader of the executive and the commanding chief. But many of the powers vested in him have been slashed. That is good for the country. We are for it. That should be democratized. This actually wouldn't have happened if the Prime Minister implemented the document which all of us party leaders agreed to. Some people are trying to keep the fire going, and this is a result of that.
The amendments that were suggested to the bill gazetted by the Cabinet of Ministers. So the Supreme Court has now given its verdict, and the question is, can this be further amended? Yes, it is possible, because under our law, during the course of the debate or at committee stage, amendments are permitted, and those amendments, there is no opportunity to send it back to the Supreme Court, because what has to be Supreme Court is what is gazetted. So few amendments could be made here and after, but that has this important qualification. All these required changes require a 2/3 majority. So therefore, if the 2/3 is not forthcoming, it will not be put to the, it will not become law.
There is absolutely no issue in passing this bill. All of us are in agreement of this bill, which does not show any regard to the public referendum. This bill is to be taken up for debate on the 20th and 21st. And during that time frame, we hope to table it with more reforms within the framework of the 2/3 majority in a much more reasonable manner. With that, we are working tirelessly to expedite the process of tabling the relevant articles to the Constitution to abolish the electoral system. This also will be tabled between the 20th and 21st. That is our expectation.